This is the One and All podcast, a proud member of the Dunham Audio Network.
We will always be the same. Our beliefs will be unchanging and unwavering. We believe continually in one truth, but for all humanity. In one Savior, but for all people. One truth that will be delivered in love and compassion, connecting every one person to all that God has promised them.
So ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Should we do an intro, or like an intro right here, right now, or an intro after? True to form.
I think your mic's on, dude. So This is the intro.
This is it.
This is what is gonna make it
To the One and All podcast.
I'm actually using a different mic today.
If you can't tell, and if you could, we'd like to talk to you.
This is the primary guest mic that I'm using today.
You got to be on your game.
So hopefully my voice sounds better in this guy. Does it?
Yeah.
Can you tell, Aaron, already?
I can tell. Yeah.
Well,
recapping season 1.
Yes.
Actually, let's start the conversation here, because this was before we even, when we were dreaming this podcast up, you had suggested seasons. And I'm sure that the people listening, and myself included, thinking about the podcasts I listen to, some of them are seasonal and some of them just have ongoing, they're up to 500 episodes, 600. Why, from a producer standpoint, why is it beneficial to do seasons, and why is this a seasonal podcast?
To me, seasons, personally, it just helps me think of things in batches, like things to focus on, right? If there's no end in sight, there's really, the benefit is you have this long continuous thought,
yes,
or long continuous approach, long continuous diving in. So at least just when you break it up in seasons, I feel like you can go, hey, let's see what takes shape over, 10, 20 episodes, however long it is. Let's see what takes shape here. But we know we're looking at these things. We know we're talking to these people. So looking at it like that, I think lets you focus a little bit on what you want to get after.
Yes.
I think, at least.
And that makes sense to me. And then you have a little bit of a break, which is what we're about to go into. This marks the end of season 1, and we'll have a little bit of a break, reevaluate, which we want to do a little bit of that right here, reevaluate what happened in season 1, and then also focus in on what season 2 can be, and just kind of keep stacking seasons on top of one another.
And I think the exciting thing too is, this is so, what happens here is so collective, and is so, as far as the input, the executive team here at One and All Church, we meet regularly and we hear hey, these are valuable things. Hey, let's talk about this stuff. Hey, can we dive into these things? I think that's awesome. And even in opening it up to the listeners, if you are a member of One and All Church, feedback is open.
Yes.
Right? And we want to hear, that's something we want to focus on and dive into in season 2 is this next batch of conversations that we have. We want to broaden the voices.
Make it even more conversational.
Yeah.
We're not going to buy you coffee, but we would
that might be
a
little unfriendly to the budget.
That's right. We would love to, maybe we will. I don't know. Maybe that'll be a giveaway. All contingent upon a sponsor 20 episodes deep. But that I think in review of season 1 for me, what you hit on just there, conversation, we opened the door for conversation. And now we want to continue opening that door because we realize this is a really powerful medium that partners with weekend services here at One and All, but it's also just different enough that it gives people an opportunity to enter in on a conversation instead of just listening to content. This is content to listen to, but it is also content to be interacted with. That's why we're on Instagram. That's why in the description, wherever you listen to your podcast, we have opportunity for you to email us because we want to hear what you guys want to talk about and what you even want to contribute to the conversation. Not only is that Jeff's favorite way to interact is by being asked off the cuff questions. But it's also that's why we created this, not only to give space for Jeff and for whoever else sits in the seats in this office to just have candid conversations and share things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to share, but also the same for the listener, share things they wouldn't otherwise be able to share, or it wouldn't make sense. And so season 2, that season 1 opened the door, and we want to open the door even wider in season 2.
Yeah, and I think with this first batch of conversations we've had, I know we started off just wanting to not really like having somewhat of a framework, but also keeping it open enough to go, hey, let's just kind of see where God wants to lead these conversations. Let's see what's happening. I know we started with wanting to let people in and go, hey, these are some of the people that exist here at One and All Church, but we don't want this to just stay here for One and All Church. We want to go beyond. We want to broaden that word, broaden our voices here. But I think it's super valuable in starting these initial conversations, in starting and going, hey, let's just pull back the curtain. Hey, let's let people have a seat here in some of these quote unquote back rooms of the church, and just kind of demystify the church a little bit. These are regular people that are a part of church. Jeff is just a regular dude.
Jeff is a regular dude.
Flaws and all, brilliance and all.
Yeah.
Like, I believe we're all given such beautiful and unique fingerprints from God, gifts from God. And those come with our downsides too.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to understand that we aren't all perfect. We don't all share the same views.
Yes.
And perspectives. And that's valuable to let people know that. And if you haven't caught in some of the episodes that we've had this season, we had some really great conversations with Jeff, dealing with some difficult issues, dealing with some unpopular things to talk about.
Yes.
So if you haven't, revisit the season. Look at those episodes. It's really valuable. We're hoping and praying that those types of tenuous conversations continue to happen.
Yes.
With varying perspective and varying views.
Yep.
We understand we don't want this to be an echo chamber.
Yes.
We want challenge to be here.
Yeah. There were a couple times in this season where even before going into the podcast or reflecting something that had just been recorded, that whole idea of having the conversation in a vacuum or an echo chamber was expressed, and wanting to intentionally not have it be that.
Yeah.
And so one of the areas we want to go reflecting or building upon what happened in season 1 is the introduction of, in some cases, additional voices, in some cases, just one-off voices where we actually have a differing perspective that is adding to the conversation. Because there's sometimes whatever our guest, Jeff, in a lot of cases was talking about, either Ben or myself didn't have a good enough grasp on what an alternative or where to push back. And so we want to make sure that if this is a podcast about conversations and having good conversations, that the conversation is actually represented well from anybody who may be listening. And so, just not wanting season 2 to be an echo chamber of, hey, we all feel really good about what we're doing here at One and All, One and All, One and All, One and All, but actually making it about one and all to where anybody could listen, feel represented, learn something, gain something from the conversation, and not just have it be one-sided.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about kind of where we're headed.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about where we've been, where we want to go. But before we do that, one highlight. Just had this idea.
Oh, man.
One highlight from the season from Aaron Magnuson.
Yeah. I would say the highlight for me had to be, I'm gonna take 2 highlights.
So selfish.
I know. It's
all right.
The first highlight being the conversation surrounding race and the Black community. I think, I would say this is primary. So this is my highlight, but there was a lot that happened in these 20 episodes. And the highlight being what we learned was that there was a transparent conversation that was able to happen in here that benefited future conversations that happened. It also benefited people's perspectives about what's going on here, because these conversations don't not everybody's able to have a conversation with Jeff or anybody that we would, in this case it was Jeff, but in anybody we would have in that seat necessarily at scale. And so anybody who listened to that, maybe they had questions, maybe they doubted, maybe they didn't doubt, but they definitively knew something after the fact from having that conversation. And then for Jeff, going into the weekend to deliver a message, already kind of fleshing out this conversation instead of just in his head or maybe with a couple texts or a phone call, actually being able to have that conversation and then go and deliver that message on the weekend. There was an enhanced richness. It was marinated a little bit more, well fleshed out. And so seeing how that conversation went in here and knowing that it played a role for something larger and for even things in the future kind of creates a good framework for what we want this podcast to be. And so that was definitely a highlight for me. And then I would say my sub highlight, not that it's any lesser, there was specifically One and All outreach when we interviewed Michael, Danielle, and Audrey. That was a microcosm of a larger thing that happened when we had lots of, over the course of the whole season, is there was people that I was able to hear their stories that I work with them. I work 2 feet from these people. And I had never heard the stories that they shared. And so being able to allow this space to show people for people, like you said, Ben, the best and the worst, and then also helping to understand that Christians aren't some magical superhero perfect people, that when they work in a church, really amazing things happen. It's just ordinary people who God is using, and we each have a story. And so being able to hear those stories was a highlight as well, particularly in that episode.
Yeah.
What about you? Highlight?
Highlight for me would be, I guess, just being able to speak with you, Aaron, every week.
Yeah.
That's number one. That's it. No.
I would take that, but that is partially true.
Yeah,
Ben wouldn't tell you
that's
that
maybe
is
the
true.
third one. If I had 2, that would be 3. But definitely a valuable part of this. A highlight for me is this is difficult to pinpoint to one moment. Because like you said, just so many conversations that were had that were so valuable. But really, the episode with Jeff talking about race, I think that episode in particular, I think it was around like 15 or 16, something around there. I think it championed what I really feel like God is doing in these conversations.
Yes.
In terms of breaking down barriers, breaking down facades, and getting to the core of things, getting to the root of things. That can't happen outside of conversation.
Right.
Like in my experience in relationships, the best work is done through tough conversation and difficult conversation that have challenge and then that have progress. And after you've stretched and after it's stung a little bit, you're more flexible now and you're deeper. Your understanding is deeper. It's greater. So that particular episode, I think, was a champion of the entirety of what we were able to hear over the season, from hearing from people, just breaking down barriers from people, like the interview with Denford. Chizanga is one of our global partners. Hearing his story and just understanding him a bit more brings so much more context and understanding and meaning behind what he's championing there in Africa, and then what the church is involved in partnering with that.
Yes.
To a greater degree, it broadened when I give here, it broadened my understanding of, hey, these are some amazing things that are happening out of this place, and I'm happy to contribute to that.
Yes.
I feel there's a sense of pride contributing to that. So I think there was a healthy pride established in hearing those things. So
yes,
that was a highlight for sure. And the coffee. Yeah,
the coffee was such a good addition. That was Ben's idea. Actually, why don't you really quick, because that will be continuing into season 2, but really quick, in the same way that I asked you, why are we doing it seasonally? Why the coffee? This was Ben's idea. to add coffee, a little coffee review. Not only have coffee for every episode, but a coffee review. Why the coffee? And from the feedback that I've gotten from people, they like this part of each episode. But why?
So I don't know. I think I'm just a coffee fanatic, but I think probably if I were to dig into it, it's just a regular part of life. To some, I mean, some people drink tea. I mean, we heard Michael drinks tea.
Yes.
Which is strange, but you know, we want diversity
we do.
here. So
we did try that a little bit in season 1, but
some people drink tea. We get it. It's just a regular part of life. Just kind of, it's disarming. Something we can all get around and talk about and agree on or disagree on. I think it's a very minor dynamic to a conversation that when we get into bigger issues, we also talk about the flavors of things, what we don't like, what we do like. So I think this is a kind of like what's the palate a little bit, literally and figuratively. It gets us just talking about something.
Yes.
And sharing our views on something.
Yep.
When in actuality, we want to dig into that later, but we got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And like, you don't usually walk up to somebody and just get right into their, hey, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your life?
Right. Yeah.
No, you usually start with their name and then, hey, what are your interests? Like, oh, that's great. That reminds me of this. And you meet on similarities and stuff you can agree on. And then you meet challenge later where you go, hey, I'm having trouble with your thoughts on this, or you know, whatever.
Yes.
But it all starts at the bean.
It all starts at the bean. That is right. And for what I understood all that going in. The other thing that I saw that may not be noticed as a listener, but I want to let you guys in on, is what that coffee does for people that sit in the chair, whether it's sitting there waiting for them or whether it was the few episodes that I walked in late to deliver the bean. But yeah, it's also just disarming for the people within the conversation. It just does something that adds a little bit of, gets people into a more relaxed, transparent, this is not tighten up the tie, sit up straight, and this is going to be like a video that goes out that's played on the weekend. There's just a certain level of, we're just talking, to where you kind of forget that there's a mic in front of you, which is the whole goal of what we're trying to go for here.
And I think it's valuable to cover all areas, right? So to cover the really formal, to do that really well, to cover, and then, you know, and so having all, you know, both sides of the coin, all sides of the spectrum, I think is really important in any organization, in any like family, in any relationship, to make sure you're not neglecting a certain side, because I think unhealth and unrest comes from those places. So
yes,
season 2 though.
Season 2.
Let's quickly talk about what we know.
Yes,
moving forward,
because part of this break is planning. And so we don't know everything, but we do know some things, and we do know where we're trying to go. And so, I think probably the biggest thing we should tell them about is Dunham and Company. You've probably noticed that each of these, especially if you're going back and maybe listening to a favorite episode, that they have a little intro in front of them now. And so Dunham...
Well, not yet, but
not when I'm saying this.
In the next couple of weeks.
In the next couple of weeks, you will be hearing this. So go back, go back and listen. Yeah. But this podcast will be joining the Dunham Audio Network, and Dunham is a company based in Texas that helps churches in a number of ways, and helps. I shouldn't say just churches. They help. What would be the umbrella term for all? They help ministry, nonprofit organizations, particularly in the Christian space.
Yeah, they consult in a lot of media realms, and social connectivity.
Amplify their reach, and just kind of take what they're good at and spread it to more people who are in need of that. And so ONE&ALL is pretty intimately connected with the people at Dunham, and different facets of ONE&ALL have had consulting relationships with these different people. But This is a non-financial binding relationship, and it is two companies, two organizations, I should say, rather, getting together to amplify the reach. Yeah. So we're going to be part of a network of other podcasts, some names you're probably familiar with, and some names that hopefully you will take the time to get to learn. But it's a group of podcasts that will be coming together, talking about different things, some of whom we may have on the show in season 2, maybe in future seasons. But their expertise, particularly in the podcast space, is going to help One and All and the conversations we have here go further. So that is coming in season 2, a relationship with the Dunham Audio Network.
Yeah, that's right. When we first started, we had a little trip to Phoenix.
Yes.
And met, well, at least it was my first time meeting a lot of the gang there at Dunham.
Yeah, we went to their little conference. That was at the beginning of 2020. That was before all of the crazy coronavirus conversations on this pod. We had no idea that those conversations were going to dominate season 1 of this podcast. But that is where it started.
It's great to have that partnership moving forward because we want, and there will be additional partnerships moving forward because we want to expand the voice. Specifically, in broad terms, expand the voice of the church. And that starts with what's in front of us, what's in our hands. And right now we have this community, we have One and All. So moving forward, of course, we want to widen the reach. We want to widen the conversations we're having here. We want to widen the where the sermons are landing, where the gospel is hitting the parts of the world. There's so many global networks here. This is just an additional broadening, which I think is really exciting. Now, what we're looking at in season 2, I'm going to just throw out a few strong words about what we want to move forward with in season 2 and what you have to look forward to.
Yes.
The listeners, who's listening, we want this to be people, we want people that maybe aren't involved in church, people that may be far from God, people that are maybe seeking answers, seeking understanding. We want this to be for those listeners.
Yep.
We want to disarm the notions that people may have about church, disarm the notions that people may have about people that are involved in church, and let them in on conversations that we're having about relevant topics today, social issues, issues within the church. Say you have an episode titled like, "Why does the church do XYZ?"
Yep.
Or why, and using that as a catapulting point of being able to share with somebody like, hey, I know maybe you have a friend that's not involved in church and you are involved in church. And maybe you have that friend and you go, hey, remember we were talking about this one issue. I didn't have any good answers, or here, have a listen to this conversation. And that might be that person's first contact with a religious organization, with church. It might be their first experience actually hearing a vetted conversation and one that involves different perspectives, and not, someone might not be interested in hearing a sermon for the first time, but they might be interested in just listening to a conversation. And so that is something that we want to identify up front. We want the listeners, we want them engaged, people that are far from God. And we want to bring them into an understanding and also bring their voices in to share their thoughts and their perspectives.
That's right.
And second to that, additionally, is the people of One and All Church.
Yep.
We want you guys to additionally feel connected to your community here, to understand the voices that are here, and to be able to champion that, feel proud, be able to be challenged in your faith in certain conversations, be able to be affirmed in your faith in certain conversations, and broaden your perspective and deepen your connection here. And hopefully from that place, you champion this content, you champion this stuff, and you use it as a resource to give to people that may be seeking.
Yes.
So that's a big thing is the audience. Who's listening to this? We want those. We want that to be the connection point, and we're going to do that through obviously Jeff's brilliance. A lot of that in dealing with difficult topics and hermeneutics and apologetics. We know Jeff's voice is a very unique voice.
Yes,
and with the void of Ravi now passing just recently, we know Jeff is one of the biggest voices in that realm.
That's right.
And so we see that really moving forward.
One of the things we didn't tap into a ton in season 1, if at all, outside of maybe an offhanded comment or like inviting a Denford in to talk, we want to broaden this to a global conversation. So you might be listening in Australia right now, or New Zealand, India, the Philippines, and there's things that are going on in your world that are different than what's going on in America. And at the risk of this being another American church talking about American issues, neglecting the rest of the world, we really want to focus in on, let me rephrase that. We want to amplify our lead pastor, Jeff Vines' heart, and our own heart as staff here to speak to a global audience, and to not just focus in on what's happening where we live, but focus in on the issues that everybody who calls One and All home is kind of facing. We don't just want to resource the American church here. We want to resource the world. And Jeff has a big passion to do that. And so we want to give him a space to exercise that. And if you read his blog, or you've read maybe some of his social media posts where he is talking about things that are happening outside of the walls of the United States, it's more of that. And he's starting to write more. And so there's going to be a lot of really exciting things that happen in season 2, just by the nature of some of the things he's been able to focus on in 2020 that none of us could have seen coming, but it's going to add richness to these conversations here.
Yeah, and some of the practical steps is broadening the voices that you hear.
Yes.
So you're going to be hearing people that are outside of One and All Church. You're going to be hearing people, people a part of Jeff's network. Potentially people outside of it, people like Tony Bennett.
Yes.
But getting, there's a desire to get him on conversations, planning here for this next season. We want to open those doors.
Yeah.
In this next season.
Yes.
So that looks like a lot of different guests. Of course, your regular, your standard. We want to regularly hear from Jeff.
Yeah.
We know he's a leading voice here. And in addition to that, we want to broaden. So you're gonna see a broader batch of voices.
Yep.
So you're not going to be hearing this guy all the time, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah.
More voices.
Oh, thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, that would also imply you'd be hearing less of this voice as well. Yeah. More of the voices. But yeah, just bringing you guys as listeners into the conversation, I think, is a big focus of season 2 as well. And so we don't have interest in talking about things that you guys aren't interested in, or that you aren't talking about with your circles.
Yeah.
We want to enter in and weigh in on the conversations that you probably are already having, hopefully bringing a fresh, new perspective to those things, and at the very least, broadening the voices that are entered in to that conversation that you're already having. And we want to hear from you. So,
and we want to have how we're going to do that is regular Q&A episodes.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a handful of those come out. Now, in order to do a Q&A, we need questions.
That's right.
Right? So we did one this last season.
Episode right before this.
Yes.
19.
Which basically was a Q&A on a handful of episodes we had on some conversations that perhaps drew some confusion. I know I heard a lot from certain people where they're just like, hey, can you dive into this? Can you explain this a little bit more? Jeff mentioned this about hell, or he mentioned this about heaven, or hey, I'm really struggling with this concept. Those episodes are going to be really rich, and I know I learned a ton in those, and so those will be really great to tune into.
Yes.
And challenge.
That's right.
Challenge you. We don't want to champion that this is the bearer of the right answers.
That's right.
This medium. Instead, this is just a conversation with people that have questions and that have certain views and that have certain perspectives, and we weigh them against Scripture, and we just talk about, hey, where are the tension points here?
Yep. In
this conversation that we're talking about, where is there? Jeff had mentioned something earlier in the season about contradiction in the Bible, and he said, it's a regular thing that comes up about people who think the Bible contradicts itself. And he simply said, well, if there really was something that was heavy enough, something that was contradictory enough, I think over the thousands of years, I think we would have found it by now.
Right.
Something that's really worth devaluing Scripture.
Yep. And there will be the most controversial topic of all in season 2, and that is coffee. And so the coffee will continue in season 2. And Ben and I have some coffee here from Cactus. Would you say that Cactus was the winner of season 1 in regards to just being the favorite and probably ordered most often?
Yeah.
It dethroned Clatch, which is a remarkable thing here at One&ALL, because Jeff Vines and Clatch are synonymous with one another. So that was interesting. But coffee will continue in season 2. We'll have to find some new spots. There will be some new spots that you guys have not heard of.
And if you guys have spots that you're really a fan of in somewhere around Southern California, or even like what Sean mentioned, that delivery service.
Yeah.
That online where you can order different batches of beans and all that. As Aaron chooses ice in the microphone.
Yeah, just so you guys know that I'm always drinking cold brew. And that's actually exactly what I was going to ask you is, will Ben always be drinking a latte?
For the most part, I think so. But who knows? I'm a pretty just straight shooter.
Straight shooter. Yep.
Regular latte, usually 12 ounce. That's the best coffee to milk ratio, in my opinion. That's what I like to drink.
What size is that? I always get you a large.
This is a 16.
So that's, all right. So 12 ounce. So Ben will be getting 12 ounce lattes all of season.
Yeah. This Cactus latte is a delicious one. They're in Laverne, California.
Oh, D Street.
Yeah,
D as
on
in
D
dog.
Street.
Oh.
In their little downtown area. It's a brilliant shop. Local guy owns it. Also another great shop is up in Glendora, California, called Reverse Orangutan.
Yes. Love the Reverse Orangutan. They have the best ice cubes.
Big square
for the
ones,
cold brew.
yeah.
The big square ones, like the audaciously large ones. It's just a good time.
Great local guy who owns that as well.
Yes.
It exists in a co-work space, Union Co-work in Glendora, and that they make really great coffee. But I'm reading this design on the Cactus Cup, and it says, "Sunshine all the time makes a desert cactus." So that's why I guess they're called cactus, because
sunshine all the time.
All the happiness, all the pleasant flavor notes.
Yeah. Well, it always brightens my day.
Yeah.
And we hope
there you go.
And we hope that this podcast brightens yours. And do you have any final thoughts on any of this, or is this the end? Because we're about to end season 1.
Yep, we're about to end it. I think with anything, just be praying about it. Be praying about the conversations. Be praying about seeing God move. Ultimately, we don't want to be doing anything or involved in anything that God's not a part of. At least I would hope not.
Yeah, that's right.
And we want to pray that He's a part of it. Beyond hope, we want to help Him be a part of this in doing what we can with what's in our hands. And so, yeah, that's my personal desire for these next batches.
Yep.
Of episodes. We want to be helpful to people that are listening, and we want to deepen people's faith and challenge people's faith.
Yes, and we hope you want that too. And the best way that you can help this podcast right in this moment is wherever you're listening, just hit that subscribe button.
Dang, that was good.
Just hit that subscribe button.
Wow, what a transition.
And in addition to, you could also email us your comments. Because there's an email in the show notes wherever you're listening to this as well. But when you subscribe, and even if you feel compelled, writing a review, you are actually not only participating in the conversation with your questions, but you are also helping this content gain traction for those people who may also be needing to be engaged in these conversations and think about the new perspectives. So don't just keep it to yourselves. Subscribe and share it with a friend.
Yeah.
And we cannot wait for season 2.
Yeah.
There will be a little bit of a break. If you're listening to this and season 2 already exists, you don't need to take a break. Just jump right in. But we are looking forward to what God is doing, and we are only interested in what God is doing. And we see big things for this podcast, big things for this space of conversation. And it's only bigger, ever growing because of people like you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's the sign off here, Aaron? What are we doing?
Well, the struggle that I always have is I always want to say, we'll see you later. But the reality is, yes, I'm so glad I said that. That's one of the most exciting things about season 2. You will see us. We are going to incorporate video into season 2. So there you go. Last little nugget. If you've made it to the end of this, congratulations. You just found something out.
Now you can finally say it.
And I can actually say, we will see you later. I'm going to find the camera in the room and I'm going to point to it. But I got very good finally at the end. It did take multiple takes.
Yeah.
I would end it like this, and we'll, true to form, do it just normal. Maybe we'll come up with something new for season 2. I don't know. You'll have to find out. But until next time, my name is Aaron Magnuson.
And my name is Ben
Lounsbury, and this is the One and All Podcast.
See you later.